we're having a tremendous number of sales. So we have an extreme amount of demand, right? I don't know, like, I do think the supply, that we need to have some response to supply, but the demand for the number of listings that are out there is incredibly high. So the sales to new listing ratio shows you how many sales have happened in comparison to the new listings that are hitting the market. This year is the second highest in the last 15 years, 70% sales to new listings. So we're like absolutely blowing other years out of the market.
What is up, YouTube? Matt McKeever here, and we're back with Emma talking about the Toronto real estate market. Hey, Emma, how's it going?
Doing well, Matt. Yourself?
Doing well as well. And so really curious to hear what's going on in the Toronto market. These days, it seems like there's more rumors than ever before around real estate. Just a lot of people coming up with their, shooting from the hip opinions. I always love sitting down with you and really getting deep into the facts and just what's actually going on. So I know you've got a presentation together, but before we even jump into that, in general, what are you seeing going on, last month, the month of August, as well as what's going on these days right now in September?
Yeah, so I think the fall market has sort of started off status quo, kind of what we expect historically from a seasonal perspective. A little bit more activity, definitely more buyer interest. So, historically what we see is people take the summer off, they're enjoying the weather, and then after Labor Day, people hunker down, kids are back in school, and they go, okay, cool, let's focus a little bit more on real estate. So on both sides, the listing side, people often want to enjoy the summer in their current house, and then they'll put things on the market early September. And then what we historically see is as more listings come online, obviously there's more buyer eyeballs online as well, because that's where everybody sort of starts their search. So as there's more new inventory that pops up, you'll see people sort of like activity online is a little bit more consistent because there's probably more regular inventory popping up in anybody's given criteria. So it's, a similar thing to if you and I go to buy something on Amazon or anything kind of online, you're looking at midnight and then in the morning you kind of forget about it. But if there's something, something continuously hits your feed, it's a little bit more top of mind. And I find that's kind of what's going on with real estate right now is, in July and August, you may have only seen maybe one listing in your criteria per week. So, you see something on Monday and you kind of forget about it for the week, and then you come back next Monday and another listing pops up. Now it might be every day something new pops up. So it's just more top of mind and a little bit more activity there. And that's typically what we see in fall market because it's historically the second busiest season in real estate.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. And so I'm excited to jump into the presentation. So we'll pull it up here now.
Yeah,
and
sure.
What were we seeing in the month of August?
Yeah, so overall, it's been relatively flat across the board from July to August. So condo prices were pretty flat. Average price right now is $720,000, just shy of 721. It was about 715. So we've honestly hovered kind of that 715 to 725 mark for quite some time now. So condo prices have been fairly flat. Same with condo townhouses. We've kind of hovered, 790 to kind of like 820 over the last couple of months, and they've been quite flat as well. Same with semis. We're hovering kind of around that 1.2. So we're at 1.214 now, and last month was 1.205. And then detached is actually where we saw the biggest move month over month. So detached pricing is back up to 1.674, and we were down to 1.633 last month. So that's kind of where we saw the biggest market move month over month. But overall fairly flat from July until August, which is historically what we see. We actually usually see a bit of a pullback in August, but we saw a little bit more activity this year than we had in previous years. So it'll be, I'm excited to kind of share that with you in a couple slides here. Overall sales activity, obviously we'll see, in the detached, semi-detached, and condo townhouse sector, things look like they're down quite a bit. Last summer was active for these segments of the market. And then, of course, condos were quite slow, basically until December of last year. So to see this up double digits doesn't really surprise me. So, these look like exciting numbers. They're not overly exciting if we compare last year to this year. But, for the most part, activity is down a little bit in terms of sales in Toronto for these kind of three portions of the market, and then condos are up. And then just, anybody that kind of bought last year in terms of year over year changes, everybody's done fairly well. If you bought in August 2020, you're up across the board. So 11% in the detached segment, 4.1 in semis, about 6% in row houses here, or townhouses. These would be freehold townhouses. Condos are up about 7%, and then condo townhouses are about 10%. So, 6 to 10% kind of across the board in terms of pricing changes from August 2020 to August 2021. And then important metrics. So months of inventory. Obviously, we always look at this.
Yeah.
It's been fairly flat from July to August. So we've seen a little bit of a pullback in the semis, segment, not much. Row houses have pulled back a little bit, and condos have pulled back a little bit, where condo townhouses and detached have remained relatively flat. So not a whole heck of a lot of movement. I would consider this fairly flat. There isn't anything that jumps out to me. So inventory is still, it's still pretty tight. We're definitely, feeling that on the listing side of things for buyers. And it's turned out to be relatively favorable for most of our sellers. And we've had quite a few listings recently. So, obviously with the low inventory that we see, it causes quite a bit of demand from a buyer's perspective on a per listing ratio.
Yeah. And so with some of those listings that you've recently had, are you seeing the offers when they come in? Are they fast and furious, clean type offers? What does that look like?
Yeah. So we've definitely seen some fairly aggressive offers. Like, we put up a listing yesterday around noon, had an offer in our inbox yesterday evening. I can't disclose too many details on it because it hasn't been finalized as of yet, but definitely seeing some more aggressive activity from a buyer's perspective. I think, August was a little bit of an interesting month. It was actually our biggest month for our team. So we actually got a really good kind of mixed bag because we had a lot of listings. We also had a lot of buyers. So it was actually interesting to see the spectrum of kind of what was going on. I think our strategy for our listings in August was quite well. Our sellers did actually quite well in August, but there were a couple of buyers out there that we were able to get some fantastic deals for. Like, we ended up actually doing a deal, was it last week or the week before actually? And our buyers had been competing in actually Durham region. So they were selling their condo and upsizing to go out to Durham region. And we had been competing. It's been quite aggressive out there. I mean, every offer that every sort of property that we were putting offers in on, we were competing with, 7+ offers. And we end up getting our clients a property well under market value. They were also holding back offers, and it just so happened that a bunch of properties had selected their offer presentation at the exact same time on the exact same day. So that's another strategy that any viewers might want to take into consideration. Or if you're listing, you need to keep your eye on the prize as to what competitors are doing, because everybody put their offer presentation date and time at the exact same time. It was like a Tuesday night at 6. And it just so happened that a bunch of buyers end up flocking to one particular listing, leaving this one open for us.
Interesting.
And so we end up being the only offer because the buyer pool was spread among so many listings that night. But we end up getting them a property, it's probably $35K under market value in an extremely competitive market. So just a strategy thing on both sides is on the buyer side, if you've got a couple of listings that you're looking at that are holding offers on the same night, make sure that you're keeping your eyes peeled on every single one, because sometimes all of the buyers flock to one particular property, leaving other ones open. And then, on the listing side of things, make sure that you're keeping an eye for any competitors that potentially come to market, so that doesn't happen to your listing. You want to be the only person on offer night if possible.
Yeah, that's a great tip. And I don't think I've ever really heard someone lay that out, but it's important to understand we're not operating in a vacuum. There are other people trying to buy and sell houses as well, and being aware of how that impacts our potential transaction. That's huge.
It's super common in the Toronto market to see most listings usually come out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We find that very few listings come out at the end of the week. And so as a result of that, if someone has selected the marketing strategy to go with a multiple offer situation, meaning that they've set an offer date and that they're going to review all offers on one particular date, it would be very common for someone to, for instance, list on a Tuesday and then wait 1 week and review offers the following Tuesday. So it's actually super common to see offer night held on Tuesday or Wednesday. So it's just something to take into consideration. Maybe you want to structure your offer night on a Monday or a Thursday if that helps to eliminate some of the competition that could otherwise pop up on that week. But it's just important to understand kind of like what happens in the market, so that you are the one that gets stuck with 60 showings and no offers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great insights there, Emma.
So pricing trends. This is why I think, just going back to my earlier point, that August was actually a little bit interesting, because what you'll see is historically we see the bottom of the market in August with a little bit of an uptick in pricing in September. This is freehold, this is condo, obviously, but we kind of see that across the board here, where you'll start to see the uptrend in pricing for September. We actually saw this bit of a lull and an uptick head back up in August, which is fairly unusual if we look at the last kind of 5 years here. So I'm curious to see if we're going to continue to see this trend upwards. I think we will, just given the over asking trends and the time on market and days on market that I'll show you in a second here. But yeah, just interesting to kind of see. I think we actually bottomed out a little bit earlier than what we typically do this year. And then, yeah, just again, to my earlier point, like condos have been fairly flat. We've got more fluctuation in the market in previous years. We've been kind of towing the same line for, since May. So, nothing too exciting in the condo market, but I also think that that's probably good news kind of across the board.
Mm-hmm.
And then if we go to new listing trends, we're actually seeing what we've seen historically. So this kind of dotted line is the 10-year average across both. And this green line is 2021 here. You'll notice like we're basically seeing the exact same thing that we've seen in previous years. So a little bit of a bottom out in August. And then, like I said, we'll probably see more listings. Like historically, we do see more inventory hit the market in September, but there's also more buyers in September. So to see that ratio of new listings to sales stay the same, it's to be expected. But, if you are a buyer that's looking for your dream house, September and October are great months to look, because you're actually typically going to have more selection. You might pay a little bit of a higher price, but if this is the property that you're planning on living in for the next 15 or 20 years, historically it will still be cheaper for you to buy in fall 2021 than spring 2022. But if you are looking for your dream house and you want to have some selection, you should probably consider actually having a good look at the market over the next 6 weeks before it gets pretty cold. We'll probably start to see things again here, November, December die down. So we'll probably see, September and October pretty good. And then as soon as first snowfall hits, you'll probably see listings dwindle off again. So this could be a good area for someone who's just looking for like a smoking deal in terms of price, but you're not going to have a ton of selection to choose from. So if you're a buyer looking for your dream house, now is probably a great time. Mm-hmm. If you're investor that's just looking solely on price and you don't care much about any other variables, then you might want to wait until November or December when things kind of cool down a little bit again.
Yeah, absolutely.
So transaction volume by week. We had our last video, we ended basically on week 31, I believe. So we've actually seen a little bit of consolidation, but it's been relatively relatively cool. I mean, we're seeing probably the same amount of transactions happening that we did in kind of end of January here. So it's been a little bit slower in terms of like actual transaction volume. I actually would have expected this to be a little bit higher, but if we look here at the over and under asking, we looked at this last video as well, Matt. So we kind of stopped here, and I know when we said we had seen a little bit of a drop, and I was expecting things to come back up. You can start to see like we're on a little bit of an uptrend. This week here, we're only halfway through, but you can start to see that the trend is upwards for over under asking, and so we're seeing, you know, more properties sell over asking. Historically, if we see this number trend upwards, we can usually expect that pricing is kind of following. So this number indicates how many properties are selling over asking price. And if they're selling over asking price, that means there's some strength in the market. We typically expect that prices may follow this trend line here.
Right. Yeah. Appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah. And then I think the most interesting statistic is if we're actually looking from January to August, so we consolidate throughout the entire year here. 2021 has blown every other out of the last 15 years. Blown the numbers out of the water in terms of total number of sales. So we're at almost 90,000 sales year to date, right?
Yeah.
The closest year is 2016, which is 79,000. So we're almost 10,000 above that.
Yeah. And for anyone with a short memory, Emma, do you mind just kind of sharing like what was going on in 2016, 2017 in the real estate market?
Yeah, so the market was absolutely on fire. Those were two of the strongest years since I've been in real estate for sure. We saw a little bit of a cool down here because that is when the government intervention for like foreign buyers, the foreign buyers tax came in, the non-residence tax came in. So we saw a little bit of a cool down there, but the condo market was absolutely on fire. Like these were the two biggest years for growth in the condo market. So it's actually interesting to see that we've beat that by a fairly significant amount, the total number of sales year to date. However, we're still seeing, and this is why I think there's really no good answer to any of the political parties' responses to the housing market.
Yeah,
is people are like, oh, well, there's no listings. We can implement all of these. We can implement as many variables as we want, but when we boil down what the actual issue is, like we've actually seen in the last 15 years, this year we've seen the second most number of listings ever in the last 15 years, right? So the new listings hitting the market isn't necessarily the issue. We're having a ton of listings. It's like second most ever, and like fairly close to the top. We're like 900.
Yeah.
Right. But we're having a tremendous number of sales. So we have an extreme amount of demand. Right. I don't know. Like I do think the supply. That we need to have some response to supply, but the demand for the number of listings that are out there is incredibly high. So the sales to new listing ratio shows you how many sales have happened in comparison to the new listings that are hitting the market. This year is the second highest in the last 15 years, 70% sales to new listings. So we're like absolutely blowing other years out of the market.
Yeah, really appreciate you highlighting this, just because it really does shine a light on like 2016, we're essentially at the same SNLR ratio, right? Like that's interesting.
Yeah, so obviously I don't think it's a fairly simple answer to solving this problem, but I think what this graph or these numbers indicate is that like the demand is significantly outweighing the supply, and it's not like we're seeing no inventory hit the market. We're actually seeing a lot in comparison to other years. It's just the demand is extremely high, and I know there's the potential solution of limiting foreign buyers for 2 years and stuff like that. I'll be honest, since they actually implemented that taxation in 2017, These years earlier in my career, I did actually have a lot of foreign investment. And since they implemented this, the taxation in 2017, I have personally seen a drop off, but with that, in terms of like actual foreign investment that's come through my pipeline personally on the condo side of things, but that hasn't actually solved anything clearly. So I don't know. I think it sounds like a great idea, and maybe it does. Maybe it does have an effect in the short term, but I think it did have a short-term effect here in 2017. Maybe it does have a short-term effect if it is implemented, but I don't think ultimately it's a solution, because we've seen, you know, the market has still been quite hot since 2017. So I don't think it's the be-all, end-all solution to this problem. So just some more information kind of on September. So September is historically favorable for sellers. If you're thinking about going to market this year, you know, if you're a seller and you're thinking about going to market, I would probably urge you to do it in fall versus winter. Typically, we do see an overall increase in activity. Like I said at the beginning of the video, there's just more focus on real estate with the summer ending. Typically, there is a better listing selection for buyers, and you know, but multiple offers are more common. So you're going to have a better selection to choose from, but you're also probably going to have a little bit more competition. So historically, the fall is more favorable for sellers than it is for buyers. So just to know kind of like who has the advantage over the next couple of months, it'll probably be sellers over buyers, to be honest.
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing that, just because, again, I know there's been a lot of people that maybe even for the last 18 months have been kind of sitting on the sidelines, waiting, hoping that they're going to see that that big drop. And, you know, right now the data definitely isn't indicating it.
Yeah, I haven't really seen a huge slowdown. I think if we just continue to track these numbers, obviously neither of us have a crystal ball, but I don't see there being any indicators that are going to have some sort of catastrophic collapse of the real estate market as far as what I can see. But again, you never know. Okay, so a quick condo market update. So condo sales were down again. So we saw condo sales were down about 7% from June to July. We're now seeing them down again, another almost 9% from July to August. So 1,700 total sales in August. Toronto West, we actually saw almost a 10% uptick in activity. We had just over 300 sales, but prices are actually down 6%. Now, if you own over here, that doesn't necessarily mean the market has crashed or anything. It could just be an uptick in terms of smaller that have sold. It could be more one-bedroom sales, that kind of thing. It's a little bit more difficult to say. But if you are looking at getting in Toronto West, the average price is down a little bit, so it could be a good time to maybe look a little bit more seriously into the area. Central, which is which basically is comprised mainly of downtown condos, which is where the bulk of the transactions happen. So we've seen a 5% decrease in overall activity. It was about mid 1200s last month. Prices are up about 3%. So the average price downtown is about 783. Last month was 757. And then the East End, we've seen 237 sales, so 6% uptick in activity, and then the average price is still at 582, so it stayed flat. It was 582 last month as well. So just to give a little bit of a breakdown of kind of what's happening in each sector of the market in Toronto there. And then days on market. So this is in addition to kind of over and under asking, another good indicator as to kind of what we expect is happening and kind of strength is in the market. So when we talked about this last month, Matt, we saw that this was trending upwards. So if this trends upwards, it means that there's that properties are sitting around on the market for a longer period of time. From August to September, we usually see this number come down. August to September it comes down, and here we're seeing August to September come down a little bit, which means that properties are moving more quickly. This unfortunately got cut off, but this is about 15 days right here. So we were seeing an average about like 16, 17 days, and now we're probably about 12 or 13 days. So as we continue to see this trend line move downwards, it means that properties are moving more quickly. So if you are in the market, you might not have as much time per listing. So if there is something that you're interested in seeing, just make sure that you do make it a priority to actually get out and see that property as soon as possible. You might not have as much time for that property to sit around as what you would have last month.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, no worries. And then a quick rental market update. So the rental market we've seen has been on fire over the last couple months. I think we have done this 3 or 4 months where we've tracked this, and they've been up quite a bit. This is the first month where prices have been flat. So the average rental, and again, to keep the numbers fair, these numbers are for 1-bedroom plus den units in the waterfront community, so CO1, that have a balcony and parking that are over 500 square feet. The average price point is $23.65 now. It was $23.47 last month, so it's stayed relatively flat. We were seeing like $150 a month over the last couple of months. But what's really important is the average days on market has dropped from 21 to 14. So prices might be staying flat, but again, things are moving more quickly. So if you are in the rental market, and you need to get a new rental, definitely have some urgency there. Or if you're an investor, this is, might not be the best news for you from a pricing perspective, but from a vacancy perspective, we're definitely seeing that number come down a little bit. So it should be a little bit quicker for you to get a tenant placed downtown.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And then just again, a couple last kind of real estate questions I just wanted to explain. So when should you speak with an agent? I think this is a question that we get a lot. About 6 months before you actually want to have the keys is when you should probably open up the lines of communication with an agent. So typically this process takes between 4 to 6 months. So month one, our team typically does some preparation and education on kind of what's happening in the market to make sure that we have a really good understanding of what you're looking for and that we're providing you the right data. Month 2 and 3 would typically be actively searching for a new property or putting your listing on the market. And then, month 4 to 6 is probably waiting for closing. So from the time that you actually put in an offer to getting the keys, you're probably going to be waiting 2 to 3 months. So 4 to 6 months start to finish is what this process usually takes. And then we often have people ask us, how do I buy at the bottom of the market? So summer and winter are historically the seasonal bottoms. Now, again, to my earlier point, if you aren't necessarily just looking for the best price, and you're looking for the most inventory, then spring and fall are actually going to be the most favorable seasons for you because you're actually going to have the most inventory. So usually spring and fall, higher price points, summer and winter, lower price points, but spring and fall, more inventory, summer and winter, not as much inventory, so not as much selection. So depending on who you are, as a buyer or a seller, just take those points into consideration. If you're looking at like timing the market, you can't necessarily time the market, but if you're thinking, hey, I'm going to do this in, this calendar year, and you're trying to debate when you want to make the trade happen, that's some data for you there. And then if you should buy or sell first. So typically you should buy first if there is a lot of competition in the market and property prices are rising. If you're confident that there will be a high level of demand for your existing property, or if you're prepared to accept an offer that lets you move on or pay kind of bridge financing. So historically, spring and fall would usually fall under this category. So if you're thinking about buying and selling right now, you might want to consider this depending on what the market's doing in your particular location. And then if the market's slower, if property prices are flat or they're declining, or you want to have more certainty about how much money you're going to have for your next house, you might want to consider selling first. So right now, if we're seeing property prices increase and we're seeing more competition, which is kind of what we're seeing right now, you might want to consider this if you're looking to upsize.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really appreciate you breaking it down like this. I think it just really helps give potential buyers or sellers some perspective on how to approach these things.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of moving parts, especially if you are doing both sides of the, if you're doing two transactions, both sides looking to buy and sell. It can be really overwhelming. It can be really confusing as to what you can do first. Now, with that being said, these are obviously just general rules of thumb. The most important thing to take into consideration, which is what we always do for our clients, is, are you going to lose sleep? Like, we also don't want you to be stressed. So let's take these are good rules of thumb for what most people would do, but let's also take into consideration who you are as a human being and make sure that this is actually going to be comfortable for you. Just because this could be, in theory, what might be best does not necessarily mean it's going to be the best thing for you. So you definitely need to take your personal situation into consideration, but just as a high level, to give someone some kind of thinking points. If you're debating doing one or the other, these are some good points to maybe take into consideration, or ask the agents that you're interviewing before you go in terms of what a strategy could be that would be effective for you.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's important to understand that we're not all robots, right? We actually do have some emotions that sometimes come into play with these real estate transactions. And obviously, if it's your personal residence, if it's going to be your family home for a lot of people, we really do need to factor in those emotions. Now, if you're an investor, you should probably leave the emotions at the door. But when buying for your principal residence, it makes sense to be honest with yourself.
Yeah, for sure. So hopefully this gives a good framework. But with that being said, make sure that you are working with an agent that has experience doing both sides of the transaction, because it makes a big difference overall in terms of what could potentially happen. So just to kind of give you an example, we had some clients that had this particular type of situation happen where they ended up buying first. Now they were in a position where they were prepared to take a lower offer on their property because we were able to net them a good chunk of money in their pocket. So, they had a budget. They were willing to go up to, 1.7, 1.75. We were able to get them a property around 1.5, right? So we left around $200K worth of headroom in their budget. So they said, hey, look, we don't care if we get top dollar for our condo, selling our condo. Realistically, we want 800, but we would be willing to sell at 775 or 750 if we had to, because you just saved us 200K on the top line budget. So they decided, hey, this was in our best interest because we are not going to be stressed about making sure that we get every single penny out of our house that we need to, because we just saved a bunch of money on the buy, right? So make sure that you are working with someone that can explain what strategy could potentially work based on inventory that's going on in the market and that they've got experience with it. Because if you buy at the top and you're not certain that you're going to get absolute top for your listing, that's going to leave you in a pretty stressful situation, and you definitely don't want to be, losing sleep at night over this. So make sure that you do work with someone that has done buys and sells and doesn't necessarily just focus on one thing. And again, choose whoever you feel comfortable with, but make sure that you ask the proper questions to eliminate as much stress as possible.
Absolutely.
Cool. And that's all I got for you guys today.
Awesome. Well, appreciate it, Emma. Again, really encourage anyone at home, reach out to Emma if you're looking to transact in Toronto, because it is so important that you've got someone on your power team like Emma. So she's got her IG and email address up there as well. We'll link in the video description down below. And again, as always, just really appreciate you coming so prepared, sharing your wealth of information and perspective and experience with us, Emma. And really excited to see how this market shapes up, because again, it's been such an interesting last 18 months. And I imagine we've got a few more interesting months on the horizon as well. And maybe next time we have you on, we can start exploring, we just had the federal election last night. Maybe we can get into it on the next one, how this maybe is going to impact potential real estate transactions and the thought process for real estate investors as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Matt. I appreciate it.